core of Donald Trump's puffed up, manufactured identity lies in what he described there, right? This branded sense of business acumen, the value of his assets, his deal making, in his words, again, his wealth. But the veneer of that persona was pierced by New York Judge Arthur Engoron, who found Donald Trump liable for fraud in the New York Attorney General's civil case against him. And now Judge Engoron took a step to implement his decision on Trump's liability, a ruling he was able to make before the trial even started. As a result of a new order filed by that judge today, the Trump Organization must show the court they are complying with the order to cancel their business certificates in New York and notify any movement of assets or creation of new entities. Now, in plain language, it's over. Lights out. Trump cannot do business anymore in New York, and he cannot move money around that could tamper with the case. Now, coming on a day that has developed into a smorgasbord of attempts by the ex-president to delay, dismiss, distract from the many, many legal problems, the many, many trials he faces. It started with this New York fraud case. Trump's lawyers have announced that they will move for a stay pending their appeal of this case that they filed yesterday. Over in the hush money case, Trump's attorneys filed a motion to dismiss that one, attacking Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and saying the charges he brought are politically motivated. Then there is the federal classified documents case, sometimes referred to as the Mar-a-Lago case. Trump's lawyers in that one have asked federal judge Aileen Cannon to postpone the trial until mid-November, so after the 2024 election. As of right now, that trial is set to start on May 20th of next year. Now, one of the reasons Trump's lawyers cited in their request to delay is that Trump's busy. He has a very crowded legal calendar. The lawyers claiming that they, nor Trump, could, quote, be in two places at once. One of the lawyers in the classified documents case, Chris Kise, is also the lawyer that's representing Trump in this New York fraud case in New York this week. And then there is the other federal criminal case against Donald Trump, the one looking into his efforts to subvert his defeat in the 2020 election and overturn the result. He's trying to get that one dismissed altogether, saying something like efforts to ensure election integrity were within the scope of his responsibility as president and therefore protected under presidential immunity. Okay. Now you're probably dizzy trying to make sense of all these legal maneuvers all coming today. So to make it simple, know this. Donald Trump, a man currently on trial in New York for fraud and charged with 91 criminal cases for various other alleged crimes, is trying everything and anything he can to shut down or delay the cases against him. Trump's countless and piling up legal woes are where we start the hour with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. Joining the conversation, New York Times investigative reporter Suzanne Craig. She was in the courtroom again, plus ProPublica reporter and host of the new podcast, We Need to Talk About Leonard. Andrea Bernstein is here. She's been covering Trump's businesses and Trump for years. Also joining us, Donnie Deutsch, host of the podcast On Brand, and the former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and former U.S. Attorney Harry Litman is with us. Sue, we love what's in your notebook, so just tell us what you reported today.
I think you need a whiteboard at this point.
I think I'm getting there, right?
I've got one little case.
And it's a pretty big one.
Yeah, but just in one jurisdiction.
Yeah, they're going to study
I got all these pages to keep track of it. So.
They're going to study our brains at the end.
But so this morning, sort of even before we got to court, there was an order. And this order, to me, it was interesting because, there was the motion the judge granted the motion for summary judgment and said he's found him liable for fraud. And we still didn't really know the contours of that. I think we're still going to learn more. We knew immediately there would be a receiver and there was restrictions on the business. But today we found out a little, we're just kind of finding out pieces of it, I guess. And this morning the judge had an order that said that if the Trumps want to move money or if they create a business, they need to report it to the court. And it's not just Donald Trump, it's the family and it's officers of the company. So it was notable when we walked in that had happened. And they're moving to get the names of the receivers. In the next few weeks, they have to get a list to the court. And then in court, we saw more testimony today. Don Bender, an outside accountant, was up first thing in the morning, and then his testimony finished, and then another inside accountant was in the afternoon. And it really did become a bit of a blame. It's just the blame game. I mean, Donald Trump is saying, I'm not responsible for this. My outside accountant is responsible for it. And the outside accountant, Don Bender, is saying, well, hang on, I got everything from the Trump organization. At one point yesterday, there was the testimony unit got quite heated. There was actually one of the lawyers stood up and said, you know, let's tone it down. Don Bender's not on trial. And Trump's lawyers got up and said, well, hang on, he kind of is on trial. Right. And they're really trying to place the blame at his feet today. And then another inside accountant got up today and was a witness for the government and was showing documents, the financial statements that are sort of in question, where Donald Trump inflated his wealth. And there was a note on it, you know, DJT to review. And what the government is trying to do in this case is just tie everything they can back to Donald Trump. And that's the sort of thing you're seeing, you know, inside the courtroom. And then there was this other motion today where Donald Trump's lawyers came in court and they want to have a hearing tomorrow to stay. It even was unclear what they wanted stayed, if they just wanted the summary judgment stayed or they wanted the full trial. So the trial's kind of out of the bag. It started. Right. But they were even being cagey about that, and then they said both. And I guess we'll see tomorrow where it goes. But it was a lot of things and pieces just going on today. It was a lot of stuff.
And you're watching this as well. I mean, it's clear that we can't compare them to the others because they haven't happened yet. But this one definitely gets right up into all of his stuff, right? That the whole thing was a fraud.
Right. Well, in fact, the judge found that Trump did commit repeated and persistent fraud under New York law. And, you know, it's sort of question now is whether there was a conspiracy and to what extent there was intent and how much money they have to pay. But this is someone who has now been found to have done this. And, you know, in his decision last week, the judge quoted Chico Marx from the movie Duck Soup saying, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? And it is sort of, that is kind of the model. And, you know, Suzanne's covered it, I've covered it. That is what you see over and over and over again with Trump, is this sense of the value is high when they need a loan and the value is low when they have to pay any taxes to anybody. And you see it over and over and over again. And here is Trump. And, you know, I was in the courtroom this week, and he's tall, but he's kind of hunched over, so he looks smaller, and the room feels small, and everybody's kind of together. And he cannot talk. He doesn't control the room. He doesn't control the discourse. I can't even believe that he made it for several days, because here he is in a situation where somebody else gets to decide what is true, what is false, and who has committed, you know, an act in violation of New York law. Trump cannot do that, and it is counter to his entire way of being, both as a business person and a president. And that is what he is facing right now.
Well, he didn't really make it, right? He kept coming out and like blurting out his attacks and then going back. And that's how he ended up under gag.
Yesterday he was very frustrated, and he was actually, it was the last day that he was in court. He was muttering and people could hear him.
What was he muttering?
Just complaining. And this thing that he doesn't have a jury is really bothering him, even though he didn't even have that decided. Yeah, he didn't ask for one.
Although he didn't do well with the New York jury either. I mean, look at the Eugene Carroll case. That case came down so quickly that all of us were caught off guard with that guilty verdict. Also, his company was found guilty of felonies in New York. So those were both juries. And it's sort of, you know, whatever he doesn't have is what he wants, but they weren't so great for him either.
But he likes, I think, the idea of it because it's like an audience. That's would be.
Who does he think the audience is?
Right now, who does he think it is? I think he thinks it's debate.
Us.
Exactly.
I think he's got a different. He's not the judge, but I think his lawyers, you know, they've got different. I think audiences they're looking at. I think an important one that you're seeing play out every day with his legal team is the appellate courts. And
Chris
they're
Price
really, they're very much laying the ground. And I think this motion today that might be heard tomorrow to stay the proceedings, whatever it turns out to be, is, you know, it's all set in the ground for the appeal. And the appellate court, you know, is familiar with this case. They've already heard some stuff. They've said, no, I can't imagine they're going to stop a trial midway through. But this is all where this is heading. They're not necessarily Donald Trump's audience, but that's an important audience for the lawyers.
His inability to sort of regulate his emotions is on display as well. I mean, and I just think of the profound lack of fitness that he's displayed through all of the threats of violence. But he's also shown like a profound lack of fitness to be a defendant. I mean, he's not helping his case at all.
We haven't seen fitness really do anything on the right side of the equation. I want to pick up both of your points. First off, I want to reiterate that although if you kind of lined up to the average person, something where you could potentially go to jail for, election interference, obstruction of justice, things, this is the one that gets to the core of who he is. Because before a politician, he's a businessman with big, tall buildings and lots of piles of money, and everything is big, and everything is an extension, a grandiose extension. And this is just putting a pin in that Thanksgiving Day parade balloon. And to your point, him showing up was such a mistake because you are seeing a weakened man. You are seeing somebody that can't speak out when they want to speak out, that can't control a situation, that is not in control. And I think those are 2 points. And I want to also bring it back to the top of the 4 o'clock hour, where we're ending now with a buffoon businessman. But we started with a bigoted, race-baiting, violent, incentivizing, dangerous fascist there. And that's the range here, to the white collar, where we giggle a little bit, to the part where we are so far from giggling, where we are just terrified, and where you use the words that are so powerful. What if he gets elected again? And I think we have to keep saying that over and over and over again.